Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're going to be doing another episode of our Jurassic World Evolution 2 mod spotlight, where we take a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and compare them to their real-life fossil counterparts. So today we're doing part 74, so we're really starting to make some way on these mods. So we've got pretty much all new animals today except for the last one, as you'll see on the thumbnail. But really excited. Lots of herbivores, we always love those. And we've got a crocodilian, so that's always cool. So we're going to be starting off, we've got David, who made the Dinosaurs last time. Has made us a really awesome Zalmoxes. So let's have a look at that. Look at these little goobers. Definitely a big fan. Let's see if we can find... Okay, let's see which one's at a good angle. Okay, here we are. Here's one at a good angle. So this is Zalmoxes. So Zalmoxes, very interesting animal. It's a Ralphodont ornithischian, or Guanodontian, I believe. Yeah, ornithopod. So yeah, ornithopod. Dinosaur from the Maastrichtian, so right at the end of the Cretaceous. It's featured in Prehistoric Planet. You can see the little babies, so it is one of them. From the late Cretaceous of what is now Romania. So it was first known from specimens first named as the species Monclodon robustum, and then was reclassified into Ralpodon robustus, and then in 2003 it was reclassified into the type species and pretty much what is today Zalmoxes robustus. And then in 2003 another specimen was actually found, Zalmoxes shipanorum, which is named for the Abian name of Alabians, if you say that. So it's quite known from quite a few fossils, known from Transylvania, which are named Monoclodon, as I mentioned, by Baron Fresnel-Bisca in 1899, and specific name because it's robust. In 1915, it was Ralphodon robuscum, and then Witchelsbell et al. 2003 published these new remains and found that they actually is a new species. So it comes from Zalmoxes, and Zalmoxes is a Thrinacian deity of Zalmoxis, someone spelled Zalmoxes, who retreated for 3 years in a crypt and to be resurrected in the 4th year. So likewise, the animal has been liberated from its fossil grave to get taxonomic immortality, which is kind of, poetic. The naming article further explains that the Greek legend of Zalmoxes was a phase of Pythagoras, who helped travel the Daciad for Dacan people and things like that. So just a new specimen is another species. Most species that you see depicted as robustus. And one specimen now belongs to Telemontosaurus, which actually, another specimen actually is suspected to be that, depending on basal cranial morphology. So very interesting, these guys are a rather small genus of bipedal herbivore. They have a large triangular head and beak. This Supercorum is the slightly larger species, known from a subadult that's about 2.5 meters or 8.2 feet long, as well as an ovijar about 1.2 meters or 3.9 feet long, while robustus subadults get about 2 to 2.4 meters, and an adult has been about 2.5 meters or 8.2 feet and 45 kilograms. Though there are some unnamed species of Zalmoxes or specimens that have got up to about 2.9 meters or about 9 feet. And one of the reasons why they got so small is because they lived on an island. So this is a great case of island dwarfism. So these guys, this was thought it would be isodwarfism, but then it was found to be closer in size to their ancestors. So this is kind of just the more basic condition. So, and the larger Rhabdodon and smaller Macrodon having island gigantism and island dwarfism respectively. So it's really cool. However, the species Zalmoxes are taken into account separately. It can be seen these guys follow the general size trend from Omodromus to Termontosaurus, which is quite interesting. But they also, probably because they live on an island, they have a slow growth rate and long growth period, so they would have a really growth strategy compared to a lot of other dinosaurs. Being on an island, a lot of animals on islands, because life is a lot slower on islands, typically they breed much slower. There's not as many predators, so they can afford to be a little bit more relaxed with breeding. So often island animals will sometimes even only breed bi-yearly, or often like with the case of animals like kakapo, only 4 years, every 4 years, which is quite interesting. So Z. robustus is known from 80% of its skull and typically articulated. No complete skull is known, and there's at least one individual. There was a specimen called Bruno that's quite big. 4 individuals of no skill for robustus, and yeah, it seems to be quite well known. But only the lips and with only the. We don't know much about the hands and feet, but that's something that's quite commonly lost in a lot of specimens. And while more poorly known, Chaperon is actually known from quite a few interesting skeletons. Only 2 mostly complete skeletons are known, the holotype adult and the juvenile. And ossified tendons are actually known in the juvenile specimen, showing there was circular or elliptical in cross-section and had 5 striations, which is quite interesting. And no manual materials known, so no hand material other than metatarsal and a few phalanges. So in terms of its classification, these guys, Monoclodon, Ralphodon, and Zalmoxes, have all been pretty uncertain in their placement. They're originally considered Hypsilodontidae with like Camptosaurus and things like that. But now some much more different phylogenies kind of come out, and we've learned more about these relationships of a lot of other dinosaurs. And turns out these guys are in their own group called the Ralphodontidae, with animals such as Monoclodon, Ralphodon, and Matabarosaurus. So really, really basal group in Ornithischia. So it's kind of basal to Iguanodontia. So you can have like Ralphodonts, and then a little bit earlier is kind of Tenotosaurus and Thescelosaurus and things like that, which is quite interesting. So in terms of its paleobiology, these guys are more robust than their precursors, so quite bigger build. And their growth stage is quite well known because we have juvenile material from species. And they propose the animals from the Hatzig Basin, which are smaller than their relatives elsewhere, is because of insular dwarfism, which is something that's seen a lot on Haxad as well. You get animals like Paludotitan and I think Megarosaurus, both titanosaurs that got really small because of being an island. Then you have animals like Hapsogopteryx that got huge because they're an island, which is pretty interesting. Fossils have been both in the Chapena formations, the Bez Formation of Romania, and both species have exclusively been found in the Hatzeg region, so they very likely got were that small because of dwarfism, but also just could have been their relatives. And then there's some paper that looked into their diet that suggests they would have had fibrous plants, like soft shoots, horsetails, angiosperms, furds, and things like that. So not too different from its possible relatives. But yeah, nice one, David. Like talking about really cool little dinosaurs like Zalmoxes. Really, really awesome. So we're going to let you run off and do your thing, little Zalmoxes. Next up, we've got another great mod by Hawkowl1215. Another really interesting prosauropod. Hawkowl seems to be on a prosauropod or sauropodomorph kick recently, so that's quite cool. So let's have a look at Lufingosaurus. Oh, and of course it happens. Anyway. Let's have a look at you, because you look like you're in a nice position. Look at this guy. I don't know what the music's playing. We already done that. Anyway. So, Lufangosaurus, which means Lufang lizard, is a genus of Massospondylid dinosaur. So it's the group Massospondylus, a type of early sauropod, that lives in the early Jurassic of now what is southwestern China. So the first remains are found in the 1930s by late geologist Bernard Merton and the Lower Lufang Formation near Shawan, near Lufang in the Yunnan province. And then from 1938 onwards, they were joined by paleontologist C.C. Young, and Young would go on to name the animal's type species Lufangosaurus huani in 1940, which generic name comes from Lufang, where it was found, and Huey was honouring his tutor, German paleontologist Friedrich von Huene, and Young would also publish a detailed description of the animal the following year and was signed into the holotype, which is actually a nearly complete specimen with well-preserved skull. And then another species was found, Magnus, which is also described by Young in 1940 in the same paper, and the specific name means the large one in Latin, and this was considered separate due to its larger size, being about a third larger. However, most authors kind of consider it to be the same thing, either just a larger individuals of Huangi. or you know, it could be younger ones, just bigger individuals. You know, it's like the shack of Lufengosaurus or anything. Another quote-unquote prosauropod, or early sauropodomorph is probably the better term, was named Gyptosaurus cinereus, was noted to be distinct, the half the limbs were 50 feet smaller. Then it subsequently were lumped into this guy because, of course, size is not the only way to determine it. And Lufeng was actually referred to another genus again in the 1980s, as Mitoku suggests Lufengosaurus unanosaurus was species of the South African genus Massospondylus. However, colleagues actually suggest that these guys are definitely a valid genus and, you know, saved them from being lumped. And it's kind of an animal that's gone through a bit of history. But yeah, really, really cool. Anyway, these guys are actually rather small for an early sauropodomorph at about 6 or so meters in length. However, the Magnus specimens, which are most likely the same species, just bigger individuals, got to about 9 meters long and weighed just under 2 tons, which is quite interesting. So, for an early sauropodomorph, its neck was rather long and its forelimbs were rather, relatively short. And for those who inferred the species were bipedal, which has been a common assumption for basal sauropodomorph. However, some full osteology was specified by diagnosis that a full access to literature is possible. But there's a skull of the modern description exists, and the holotype skull is about 25 centimeters or about 9.8 centimeters. So sort of its skull, it's quite deep and broad and had distinctive bony bumps by the nostril and cheeks, as you can kind of see there. The bony ridge of the upper jaw might have been anchored by soft tissue. We'll have a look at that there. It's a very interesting look to this guy. Very interesting reconstruction as well. And if so, this suggests that actually Lufengosaurus may have had larger cheeks than most other sauropodomorphs, and its closely spaced serrated teeth suggests that it was eating a diet of leaves. And about 30 major specimens of Lufengosaurus have been discovered, including juveniles. And in 1958, a specimen of Lufengosaurus was the first complete dinosaur skeleton mounted in China, which is quite interesting. So a little bit of history there. So, in terms of classification, it was originally referred to the Platysauridae family in the Sauropoda family, or suborder, so related things like Platysaurus. But as taxonomy kind of figured it out, they've been found more into the group of Massospondylidea, so most likely related to Massospondylus. And more recent evidence has really suggested that it's part of the Massospondylidea family. So it's related to animals such as Glasiosaurus, Coloradosaurus, Massospondylus, and Unanosaurus and Ginsangosaurus, which is quite interesting. So in terms of its paleobiology, like a lot of... Oh, I keep messing up with that. Anyway. Let's see, there we are, perfect. In terms of its anatomy, it's had much longer hind limbs than forelimbs and was bipedal, like early other sauropodomorphs, and were herbivorous, even though they had sharp claws, even with the large thumb spikes, potentially just to defend from predators or just to hold over from being, you know, a predator. The features have been used to support claims more recent than Cooper 1981 that may have actually been partly omnivorous. But the sharp teeth witnessed in Lufengosaurus were more similar to those to iguanian lizards, which are mostly herbivores. Though even the most herbivorous animals probably eat meat from time to time, as if you've seen videos of horses eating chicks, things like that. So they're likely from time to time they would eat a bit of meat. Alternatively, the claws may have been used for defense or raking foliage or potentially for display. And embryos of the genus actually show some of the early evidence of vertebrate soft tissue preservation, which is quite cool. And while this guy was originally thought to be from the Triassic, nowadays the Lufeng Formation is dated to the lower Jurassic instead. So it's a little bit earlier than a little bit later than we thought. It's from the early Jurassic, about 195 to 190 million years ago, in the Heterosaurinian age, implying that these guys lived in a more recent time frame. So not a Jurassic, but an early Jurassic animal. So really, really cool regardless. I really do love the skins. Hockel really always does knock it out of the park with the skins. It's so cool. Definitely a big fan. So I'm going to let you run off and do your thing. Get out of here, mates. Now, next up, we've got a big 5-animal pack. So this is Chocolate's North America pack that includes 5 really, really cool animals from all across North America. We've got 3 hadrosaurs, or, 3 they're both ornithoskins, and 2 ceratopsians. So let's have a look at the first one. We've got Critonosaurus. We don't want them running off. I hate that when they do that. It's just because I think the Lufagnosaurus is based on a carnivore, so they always panic. But we'll have a look at you, since you're posing so perfectly for us. Look at how beautiful this guy is. Anyway, we can have a look at this guy running off. I think that's the base skin. Looks quite cool. Now we have a look at you. Why not? You look alright. Anyway, this is Crachnosaurus. It's an incompletely known genus of hadrosaurid, so it's a duckbill dinosaur. They lived between 74 to 66 million years ago in North America during the late Cretaceous. And its name means separated lizard. It refers to the arrangement of cheekbones in the holotype. But often it's mistaken as noble lizard, as it becomes with a rolled nose, things like that. So, in 1904, Barnum Brown discovered the type specimen for Crachnosaurus near the Ojo Alamo Formation in San Juan County, New Mexico, in the US, which is following on the expedition, but did not find they correlate the stratigraphy. But then in 1916, they found it to be the late Campanian age Kirkland Formation. And when discovered, much of its front skull was eroded, and they reconstructed it based on the proportions of what is now called a Montosaurus, leaving out many fragments. However, notice that it was different from the fragments, but it was explained by different by country. He initially wanted to call it Nectosaurus, but found the name was already in use, which is interesting. And in 1914, the publication of the arch-snouted Canadian genus Gyptosaurus changed Brown's mind about the anatomy of the snout, and then he changed it to be more like Gryptosaurus, and then synonymized Gryptosaurus into Crachnosaurus, which was supported by Gilmore, which is something, this always happens. But then at the time they were considered synonymous, and now from this time until 1990, it was considered at least a species of Caenorhabditis or Noctopalus. It was just a species of Gryptosaurus. But then it was considered, Hadrosaurus biclavus, which was known from 1999. It was antedentary. Was also assigned to this guy, but it's no longer accepted. So it's a little bit of taxonomy here and there. You know how it is. And by the late 1990s, early 1980s, Hadrosaurus entered discussion to be a possible synonym of either Cretosaurus, Gyptosaurus, things like that. But then they're often considered synonymized. But yeah, there's a big history of the exact taxonomy of these guys. I'm not going to go too much into it because it's a little bit confusing. Things are called Anomadumians, things like that. But yeah, really, really interesting. So in terms of its description, these guys are a type specimen of Cryptosaurus navadolensis. Is often represented by a partial skull and lower jaws and associated postcranial or behind the head remains. They have a greater portion of muzzle and the upper beak is missing, but it's based on Cryptosaurus. It looks quite similar. The length of the skull is estimated to be about 87 centimeters from the tip to the beak. However, the remains themselves of an animal of quite a decent size, about 9 meters or about 30 feet long, and weighed about 4 tons in body mass. So they would have a quadrate that articulates lower to the back of the skull. And this would actually form a complete crest that kind of comes from the nasals and is very similar to things such as Dryptosaurus. And allows it to be distinguished, but it would kind of come up, rises then above the eyes and fall back under itself. You can see that kind of, like that. Very different from things like Gyptosaurus, but this is kind of another way you tell Crinosaurus apart, because it kind of rounds up, and then comes up to a bit of the eye, and then comes back down. So probably a little bit easier to look at if it was a little bit obvious on here, but I think it's a little bit more chunky on here, but still cool. I can still kind of see it. Really awesome. And according to it was described, there was a few things that they kind of redescribed it as. It's an animal with a complex taxonomic history, but I'm not going to go too much into that. But in terms of its relationships, it's a hadrosaurian hadrosaurid, so a flat-headed or solid-crested duckbill. And though many species and specimens have been referred to this genus in the past, most of them do not show any diagnostic characteristics and often been synonymized. But there are things like closest relatives like Gyptosaurus and Screnosaurus. Clade within the family Curstoni, which is in the larger group Cerolophonini, so more closely related things like Cerolophus and things like that within that group. And then the other family is Chrysosaunes, so these are relatives, things like Cryptosaurus, Aquilarhinus, Secreosaurus, things like that. Those would be their relatives. So in terms of the paleobiology, the nasal crest we don't know. Whatever its true form would be, most likely would be some sort of display structure or things like that, potentially audible sacs as well. And very similar to other types of hadrosaurs, these guys would have had complex skulls and dental batteries to allow them to chew. So they would have been very well adapted for biting into plants and things like that, which is quite interesting. So not too different from other hadrosaurs in that regard. But very interestingly, this animal's got quite a wide range. It was first discovered in the Kirtland Formation from the Lake Campanian between 74 to 70 million years ago, and lived with animals such as Alamosaurus, Parasaurolophus, Pentaceratops, things like that in the Kirtland Formation. And it was typically found the presence of Saurolophus and Gutnosaurus in northern latitudes suggests there would have been exchanges between the distinct northern and southern biomes of North America, which is quite interesting. And then they've been found like Companion Age Aquila Formation, found with animals like Aquila rhinus, which so Aquila rhinus was originally Crotinosaurus, but then it was given its own species name, which is interesting. There's an undescribed species from the late Maastrichtian in the Ozo-Alamo Formation, which has animals, you're the famous ones. Or the Havalevida Formation as well. It has Bravoceratops, Torosaurus, in Montosaurus and Ecdens, a hadrosaur very similar to Saurolophus, Tyrannosaurus, animals like that. Quetzalcoatlus is a dinosaur, and all sorts of other small animals. But yeah, very, very cool in terms of its kind of evolutionary history. And who knows, would have lived with T-Rex. Another something for T-Rex to eat that we love. But yeah, it's a cool dinosaur. It's a little bit underrated, but you can see much better how the skull would have looked. So you can see it comes up here, comes a bit, and then the water divot a bit, and then the skull comes up. So yeah, really, really cool. I love the pattern on this. It really come out rather well. And it's nice to see an animal that doesn't get too much love get some love, especially in this pack because it's full of all sorts of weird carnivores and things like that. So we're going to let them run off and do their thing, of course. So next one's also done by Chocolate. We've got Velafrons. You just got to stop them moving. It's kind of annoying. Alright, see they're panicking, but don't worry. This is Velafrons. Very, very interesting dinosaur I'm excited to talk about. So Velafrons, its been sailed forehead, is a genus of Lambeosaurine hadrosaurid from the late Cretaceous of Mexico. So it is known from a mostly complete skull and partial skeleton of a juvenile individual with a bony crest on its forehead, and is from the late Campanian age Cerro de Pueblo Formation about 72 million years ago from Coahuila, Mexico. And the type specimen is CPC59, and the type species is Velafrons coahuilensis. So their body is most similar to young specimens of Corythosaurus and Apacrosaurus, and was found to be a Corythosaurian from the phylogenetic analyses performed by Gates and colleagues in description of the skull. It was described in 2007 as well. The skull is actually large in comparison of skulls of other genera of a similar growth stage, so its crest may have been small in adults, or would have had potentially a different growth past, or potentially adult Velafrons would have been much larger than other Lambeosaur genera. An unusually large size has been seen in animals such as Crotinosaurus spur and Magnipolia, so it's interesting. It could be a young individual, or it could just be an old individual with a young skull. A great example of something called paedomorphy. So it would have had adult animals with juvenile characteristics, so having a smaller crest might have just been something that they had as an adult for whatever reason. But is most similar to other species of, hadrosaurs. They were large herbivores. And yeah, they would have lived in Mexico about 72 million years ago, so that's a late Campanian. And would have just done their thing. Not too much different than other dinosaurs, but still really cool. You get to talk about a cool animal. So yeah, I love the skin. I like the kind of back here. I like that big spike, or big spot there. I think it really gives it an interesting look. Even the plain one looks pretty cool. I like the spots there. Definitely did a good job. Definitely a big fan. So we're going to let you run off and do your thing, of course. Just please don't run in front of the hatchery. Alright, so this is going to be our last hadrosaur. Next up we have got Titanolophus. Okay, let's see what we got going on. They starting to run away? Oh, not too badly. Let's see what we got. Oh, look at you. Why not? So this is Tialolophus. So it names means word crest, and we'll get to why. Is a genus of hadrosaurid dinosaur in the tribe Parasaurolophini, so related to Parasaurolophus and its relatives like Charnosaurus, and it's from its type species Titalophus gallorum. So the holotype of this guy was first discovered as a semi-articulated tail in 2005 in the Cerro de Pueblo Formation in Coahuila, Mexico. And in 2013, the Mexican National Institute of Anthropology and History and the National Autonomous University of Mexico launched a joint project to recover it, and then was actually shown to be one of the most complete Langosaurines known from Mexico, with an almost complete skull, jaws, and dorsal parts of postcrania, including that articulated tail. So it was a fairly new species. It was described in 2021 from the Titanolophus chlorum in 2021. It comes from the Nahuatl word tatol, which means word, combined with Greek loph, so it means a word crest. Due to its crest actually resembling a glyph word in Aztec iconography, which is pretty cool. So, really gives it a creative name and links it to Mexico. And lives in the same place, as I mentioned, as some of the animals that we've mentioned here, like Velofrons and Coahuila ceratops that'll be coming up. That's a bit of a spoiler. But anyway, this actually represents a large individual, so about 8 meters in length. It preserves almost complete skull, complete with lower jaws. It really only lacks the subangular and quadrate bones, so it is quite well preserved. It's quite interesting. And it also has a relatively short scapular neck, which is interesting as well. And an articulated tail is also preserved. It was actually the first remains to be discovered of this taxon. So it was first described as a tail, and then we actually found the rest of it, which was pretty awesome. So Titanolophus is ascribed to the tribe Parasaurolophini, which is by Brissovac et al. 21. So it is related, its closest relatives are Beosaurus and Charnosaurus, and then also Parasaurolophus, a little bit earlier relatives of Lambosaurini, which is quite interesting. So yeah, I like the difference in the crest. It's got like a much fatter, thicker crest than things like Parasaurolophus, though they are related. So yeah, quite cool. Definitely a big fan. It's really cool to see how dinosaurs differ from each other. And yeah, quite cool. Definitely a big fan. So those are all the hadrosaurs from the pack. We'll let them go and do their thing. Next up, we're going to be moving on to a couple of the ceratopsians from the pack. So we've got Menophiceratops, a very interesting one. So let's have a look at Menophiceratops. Look at this cool little guy. So this is Menophiceratops. Where's one that looks like a nice posture? Oh, we'll have a look at you. I feel like in a mood to look at this guy. Look at how cool he is. I like his smug profile. Anyway, Menophiceratops, which means the Menifee Formation horned lizard, is a ceratopsian dinosaur from the Menifee Formation, as you could have guessed, in New Mexico in the United States. It is potentially the oldest known member of the ceratopsiids, as well as the Centrosaurine subfamily, related to animals like Ehunosaurus and Crittendenoceratops. And the type and only species is called Menophiceratops ceylani, which is known only from partial non-articulated remains. So the holotype of Menophisaurus was done by Paul Seeley in 1996 and then mentioned in a paper in 1997, but actually was not named until 2021 by Sebastian Dalman, Peter Dobson, and colleagues. And the holotype was collected from the San Jose County, New Mexico in the USA. And the rocks date to the early Campanian rocks in the Allison member of the Menifee Formation. So the holotype was then later collected and New Mexico Museum of Natural History with the permission of Brewer Land Management, who owned the fossils found on, and it consisted of a fragmentary skull, mandible, some vertebrae, and some other elements as well. which is quite interesting. So it is conservative age between 82 to 81 million years ago. That very likely could be older than that. Very, very interesting. Is actually named after the location of the fossils are found, and then the species name honors Paul Selly, who was a research associate at the New Mexico Museum of Natural History, who originally discovered them back in 1996. So a way to honor him. So as I mentioned, it is quite an early relative. It's quite early in the history of Centrosaurines. So right after the split between the Chasmosaurines, which includes Chasmosaurus, Triceratops, things like that, Pentaceratops, and then you have the Centrosaurines that includes Styracosaurus, Sinoceratops, and Pseudoceratops, animals like that. So based on comparisons, these guys weren't too big. They got to 4 to 4.5 meters long, or about 13 to 15 feet long in life. Probably weighed no more than a ton or two. Not exceptionally huge, but still really awesome. So yeah, very basal in that group of family tree of the Centrosaurines. So there's like Euhenosaurus and Crodanoceratops, so they're relatives. But the holotype was found in a greenish-grey mudstone, along with isolated turtle remains. So these guys were believed to live in a floodplain near the shores of what was of the deltas from the receding Western Interior Seaway, which was a seaway that divided North America in half, pretty much. And Maniphosaurus is known to live with Ankylosaur, a notosaurid called Evernax, another hadrosaur, another hadrosaur that's Brachylophosaurus Ornitops. Dimantera is another animal that lived with this guy. Saurontholestes, also some crocodilians, Brachychampsa, Deinosuchus, and all sorts of different turtle species. So it was a rich formation for all sorts of animals, and hopefully that we find more. But yeah, really, really cool. Nice, cool little guy. So we're going to let you run off and do your thing. And then last and certainly not least, we've already kind of covered this guy already. We've got Coahuloceratops. Okay, let's have a look at this one. This one just gives me... Oh, no. We'll have a look at this one. I like this green color. I think it looks quite nice on him. So this is Coahuloceratops, which means Coahuila horn face. These guys are a genus of ceratopsian dinosaur. This is a Chasmosaurine this time, so more closely related to Pentaceratops, Triceratops, and Tyrannosaurus. Those kind of animals. It's from the late Cretaceous, around the late Campanian, of what is now the southern Coahuila in northern Mexico. It's owned from a holotype, which is the partial skeleton of an adult specimen that includes several skull elements, and then other specimens actually may represent a juvenile, so we may have a little bit of idea about growth rates. So very interestingly, all specimens of Coahuloceratops are from a location, the Cerro de Perbo Formation. It comes with a few other animals that we've mentioned before. The dates between 72 to 71 million years ago. It was formally described in 2010, though appeared as an informal designation as early as 2008. Coahuloceratops was named by Mark A. Lowen, Scott D. Sampson, Eric Halud, and Al Falke, Martha C. Anguillan Martin, C. A. De Leon, Rodriguez, and a bunch of other names in 2010, as the type species is Coahuloceratops magasurana. So although it's based on incomplete remains, it's thought actually to possess among the largest horns of any dinosaur currently known, that even rivaled the absolute size of its later relatives, such as Triceratops and Torosaurus. And its horns were estimated to be about 1.2 meters long, or 4 feet long, though it was a medium-sized ceratopsian, so it had horns that were nearly as big, but it wasn't quite as big as things like Triceratops, which is quite interesting. So it's believed to be about 4 meters long and about a ton, and still had huge horns, which is really, really interesting. So in terms of its relationships, it's believed to be in the group Chasmosaurinae, which is, as mentioned, called Chasmosaurus, and it's found to be the sister taxon, so related to, its closest relative would have been Bravoceratops from Texas, and it would have also been related to animals like Pentaceratops, Utaceratops, Ankyloceratops, and Rhinoceratops, things like that, before the split of Triceratops and so it wouldn't have been related to Ceratops much at all. So this pairing was then replicated and then also 2021 there was Sierra Ceratops was described and actually was found to clade with this guy. So there's a new species that is closely related, Sierraceratops, also as well as Ceratops and Bravoceratops, and they would have all believed to have formed a unique clade of Southern American or Southern Laramidian, which was the continent at the time, with the Western Tertiary bumming up North America. At the time, there'd be Southern Laramidian clade only found and endemic into that area. So it's really interesting. Yeah, I think that's quite cool. But yeah, I love the colors on this guy, especially the stripes and like the bright. I like the the look of the eye spots on the frill there. Definitely did a good job. Chocolate really did a great job. So these 5 animals, the Crotinosaurus, Velafrons, Teolophus, Menophyceratops, and Gulaceratops were all done by Chocolate, who made a really, really wonderful pack. We've actually got a couple packs to cover, which I'm quite excited to go through, made by some people, so that'll be quite fun to go through and have a look at. But we're finishing off. We've still got a couple more species to go. Next up, we've got Borealisuchus, done by Husquawk Tree. Oh, that's a bit weird. Anyway, let's have a look at these wonderful guys. We'll have a look at you. I like the colors on this guy. So this is Borealisuchus, which means boreal crocodile. These guys are an extinct genus that lived in North America from the late Cretaceous into the Eocene, so survived well past the extinction of the dinosaurs. If you guys played or heard of Saurian, there's a couple species in there. There's a species in there. The species assigned to it is Bede sternbergi, which is the type specimen, and this is the type species it's based on. This lived in the late Cretaceous or the Maastrichtian of Colorado, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming. Though there's a few other species that lived in the Paleogene and the Paleocene and even in the Eocene, so they did have quite a long life span. And they were typically middle-sized crocodilians, so B. wilsoni measured about approximately 3.2 to 4.5 meters or 10 to 15 in length, so not as quite big as a saltwater crocodile, but a little bit smaller, so in the mid-range. There are about 6 different species of Borealisuchus currently recognized, with Sternbergi being the oldest, and then kind of the species like B. wilsoni is the youngest from the Eocene of Wyoming. So it tells you, for comparison, in time, it's from 70 million years ago to 47 million years ago. So that's how long this genus lasts. There was a 6th species named Thuringiensis in 2012. And it was actually fossils of this specimen were found in the Inversand Company Mile Pit in Gloucestershire Country, New Jersey. And the specific name is a reference to Exit 3 to the New Jersey Turnpike, which is the closest access highway to the locality. And the authors of the paper described it and noted that the name is a reference to, if reference to a question, every New Jersey reader counters as, oh, so you're New Jersey, you're from New Jersey, which exit. So yeah, it's kind of a way, inside joke. So although some actually early phylogenetics analyses suggested that Borealisuchus was a member of Crocodilia, which includes all the modern crocodiles, it's actually now considered to be a basal Eusuchian, so just outside the group. So it looks like a crocodile, but it's not that closely related to modern crocodiles. Great example of convergent evolution. So it's no more related pretty much to a alligator or a caiman, because it's not a member of Crocodilia. It's outside that group. It doesn't even factor. So it just looks like a weird alligator thing, but it's really not related to any of them. But yeah, really, really cool. Interesting history, it survived well past extinction. Crocodiles did quite well during that extinction because they don't need to eat nearly as much as the dinosaurs. So they were able to survive. So let them run off and do their thing. Just want to make sure that you guys get out of the way for our last animal. So Pickle, we all love Pickle, has done another remaster or another paleo overhaul of a really, really cool animal we all know and love. We have got Tarbosaurus. Oh, no, that's not what we wanted. So this is pretty much goodbye to all... Ooh. I'm still going to do it. There we are. So this is pretty much saying goodbye to all those... Let's see if we can get one a little bit. with the interesting one, with the spikes and everything. This gives us a much more accurate look at Tarbosaurus. Let's see if we can get another straighter look. Okay, let's have a look at you. So this is Tarbosaurus, a close relative, sometimes even considered the same genus as T-Rex, of course. So we can have a look at this guy and have a look at some of the differences between it and T-Rex. You can see it's got nowhere near the big bulky skull of T-Rex. I like to refer to it as, the Asian skinny cousin of T-Rex. So these guys most likely were quite different because they had a different ecology. These guys were a little bit more better adapted to feed on things like hadrosaurs and sauropods, which are big fleshy things. But because T-Rex was in North America and most of their prey base was ceratopsians and ankylosaurs, don't get me wrong, there were ankylosaurs in Asia, but they weren't quite as big, as common or as prevalent as they were in America because we had things like Ankylosaurus, Triceratops, which are all heavily armored small animals. Well, I wasn't say small, but smaller than like big hadrosaurs and big sauropods. And there was a mix, but these guys were a little bit more adapted for eating softer prey because they had a lot more titanosaurs and hadrosaurs in their environment. So they would have been a little bit more convergently evolved, potentially more like Carcharodontosaurs that lived with a lot of large titanosaurs. These guys would have lived with large titanosaurs as well. A lot more than Tyrannosaurus that only lived with Alamosaurus. So these guys were a little bit more better adapted for that. They were a little bit smaller too, so the biggest specimen I believe is like 10, 11 meters, while we have T-Rex getting well over 12 meters. And they would have been just a little bit skinnier, as I mentioned. So yeah, close relatives. It's like the difference between, like a lion and a jackal kind of thing. Oh, not a lion, jackal. That's a weird comparison. Lion and a cheetah, but not quite so extreme. That's just different ecologies, even though I wouldn't use the same genus. But anyway, those were two bad comparisons. We'll just keep going on. I really love this wonderful rendition here. You can see he's got the nice big bosses there. Really, really cool. Really love this rendition of Tarbosaurus. And you can see got the big lips that we all know and love. Really, really nice. So you can see much thinner skull. He's just not much wider. Much thinner body. In terms of its body, it's pretty much just a lanky T-Rex, which is quite cool. Nothing too distinct about it, but it's really cool that we get this really, really nice, accurate one done by Pickle. Pickle always does a great job with their mods. And I really love the pattern as well. Like, they kept the pattern as well from I believe, the original, and it comes out. It actually just fit quite well on a normal Tarbosaurus, especially when you look at the base color, which it didn't come out here because I put them all on random. But the one in the thumbnail looks really, really cool. Even this one looks quite cool, just basic brown. But yeah, you got the nice lean face, big bosses on the face there. Tiny little two-fingered hands, characteristic of most Tyrannosaurs. Pretty much all of them. S-shaped neck, big round body, big thighs, big feet, long tail. Yeah, so nothing too extreme about it. I've already talked about Tarbosaurus a lot, which of course lived in the late Maastrichtian of Asia. So around like the Namek formation, lived with animals, a lot like Tarkia, Tarbosaurus, Barrisboldia, Nemectosaurus, Therizinosaurus, Dinosaurs, so a lot of very interesting animals. Very rich formation too, so really, really cool. But yeah, perfect anatomy. Just another great rendition of Tarbosaurus. We already had Wheat's one that came out quite well and has the prehistoric planet skins, which I love. So now if you want one that's just fits the Jurassic Park style a little bit more, but is accurate to their anatomy, this is the one for you. Pickle has kind of mastered that, really keeping them very Jurassic Parky, but making them scientifically accurate in terms of anatomy. So yeah, another great one from Pickle. Cannot complain. Really, really awesome. So yeah, we're gonna let them run off and do their thing. See, look how beautiful these guys are. Look at that. I love Tarbosaurus. I think it's just such a cool dinosaur and so underrated too. Definitely deserved all the love it got from the Camp Cretaceous and everything. I'm really glad we've got it. And all these paleo edits of it too. It definitely deserves it. But anyway, so I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified below anything. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.